Yes. Item 1, call to order. It's 7:02 p.m. Item 2, establish a quorum. All board members are present. Item 3, we will have a presentation from Renaissance Architects.
My name is Mike Hyatt. I work with Renaissance Architects. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a graduate of Cashion High School. I grew up here from second grade till I graduated. It's really exciting to be back and be able to participate in this project. Been with the Renaissance Architects for the last 8 years, and Renaissance has been working with Cashion schools in the community for the past 15 years on your different school projects. And we're excited to be here and have another opportunity to provide more things, more opportunities, more projects for your students, and we're excited about it. We're going to run through real quickly the projects that are on this bond issue, show some renderings and some other things. So we'll start with that. First off, this is the area that was the old multipurpose. Used to be the swimming pool that was filled in several years ago. It's been used as a multipurpose room lately. The plan is to divide it into 2 separate rooms with a wall just in the middle of it. Provide a wrestling room on one side that you can see over here, and then a cheer palm room on the other side of that, and do some other interior renovations throughout. The next is the current football field house, that if the projects move forward and everything's moved across the street, then we'll renovate that into a VOAG classroom to get it closer to the high school, make it easier for the students to move from class to class and get there without having to travel to the far end of the campus, plus give them a newer, nicer facility. This is an overview of all the projects. It shows the athletic fields moved across the street. That's what's on this bond project. You can see some, it's basically a master plan with some other plans for the future. It's got some tentative dates on there. It does not mean those dates are set in stone. They could happen sooner if you continue to grow or if the need is there. But it also shows areas for a new elementary school down here on the corner, and also a new auditorium there. The plan is by moving all the athletic facilities across the street, it gives this area up here for future high school or expansion of your high school, and keeps all of your classrooms here on this one campus area without being spread out or having to cross the highway to get to the other classrooms. It'll just be your athletic facilities. And future parking, bus barn, some of those things in the future. Here's an overview of the athletic facilities with the new football field with an 8-lane track, have artificial surface. It'll be new bleachers on both sides, lights, scoreboard, press box. The track system will be a competition track that will meet all the OSAA standards. So you can host track meets if you choose to do that, or host regional meets, things like that the state holds every year. So it gives you opportunities to expand some stuff along with the new football facility. On the end is the multi-purpose, and we'll go over that a little bit more in a minute. And then on the far right there, you see the new baseball field that's proposed. It'll have artificial infield surface, bleachers, press box, lights, scoreboard, fencing, all of those things. Here's a rendering of the back of the home side stands. You can see it has metal panels on the around the outside, and the reason to enclose that is it gives you area for storage underneath. So it gives you some additional storage at the football field. As you move forward with the track program, there'll be certain things that you'll have to store, certain equipment, hurdles, high jump pits, all those different things. It gives you an area to look and possibly store that along with some other. Shows you the front with a section in the middle that will have chairback seats and Then you can see the track how it runs in front of the stands. This is the back of the visitors' seats. It's a smaller seating system. It's designed to hold about 300 people. It also has its own press box on top of that. Just another view of the visitor seat from the front. Here's a view of the multi-purpose at the end that will house the baseball dressing rooms, track dressing rooms, football dressing rooms. It also has a new concession stand, public restrooms. On the far end, as we move around, has an indoor practice facility that can be used by your baseball team, softball team, indoor hitting. Your band can practice in there on bad weather days. Football can practice in there. So it'll be used by multiple programs throughout the year. So it's not just a single-use facility for one program, but it's designed to host several different programs. Backside view of that. Another view. Here's the floor plan for that multi-purpose. The big area on the right is your indoor. Shows the area where you can drop some cages down for the ceiling for your indoor cages for baseball or softball or both. Your dressing room areas, coach's office. It's got a weight room here on the end of the indoor, which is how most schools are designing that nowadays because of the different type of weightlifting. It's just not the weights. It's the plyometrics. It's several different things that they do that they can move right outside the weight portion of it onto the artificial turf. Also shows the baseball locker rooms, track locker rooms, public restrooms, your concession area, meeting room, conference room, multi-purpose area in the middle, and the hallways and all of that. Next, it shows a view of the baseball field, which shows you can see the press box on this end. Bleachers will be part of that. Here's a view looking into the field to the dugouts. The home dugout will be similar to the dugout, the softball field. It will not have the dressing rooms on the back, but it'll be a similar size, a little bigger, because there's more. You got more space in a baseball field than a softball. You'll also have visitors' dugouts. And that's it.
Item 4, we will have a presentation from Stephen L. Smith and Associates.
All right, I appreciate everyone's time. My name's Jordan Smith. I'm with Stephen L. Smith Corp. We have handled the bond elections for the school district for the last couple of years, probably about 12 years, 13 years now. What we have before the patrons is identical in platform to what you all have voted on in the last couple of bonds. It's a series bond issue where we're going to vote one time for $1 amount. We're going to break that up over the next 12 years and sell those bonds as other bonds pay off the tax rolls. Again, this is the exact same platform that we utilized going all the way back to, it's the high school edition here, this building just to my east, I guess. That new building was built with this exact same platform in each of the bonds since then. So we're voting on a bond issue for $25.5 million. We're going to break that up every year. As some of your existing bonds pay off, we'll sell part of that $25.5 million. As you all know, the taxes will go up about 4.9%. You have had substantial growth in Cashion over the last couple of years. 3 years ago, a bond issue is based on your financial value. So that's the financial value of all the property, the homes, the equipment that fall within the Cashion School District boundaries. Your property values, because of corporate growth and so forth, you've gone up from $47 million in valuation 3 years ago to over $111 million on this year's current valuation. That type of growth is just about unprecedented. Because of that, we've projected absolutely no more increases in property values over the entire life of this bond. So we've tried to project this about as conservative as possible. If you grow and you continue to grow above the $111 million, then that tax impact will be a little bit lower. The 2015 bond we weren't looking at quite that substantial growth, but the reality of a conservative plan, we were supposed to go to 21 mills, and we never went up at all. We stayed at 16, which was the current millage rate. So based on that conservative outlook, no increase in property values, we've estimated high on our interest rates. If those two both hold, so no increase, high interest rates, this bond issue is going to cost about 4.9% on your property taxes. I know on a lot of the flyers and the handouts, we've equated that into actual dollars. Millage rates are kind of confusing sometimes. What you all really want to know is, how is this going to impact me personally? If you paid $1,000 in property taxes and this bond issue passes, you're going to pay about $49 more because of this bond issue. So if you have that escrowed into your mortgage monthly, you're going to pay about $4 to $5 a month with the passage of this bond. That's on a $1,000 property tax. So the best way, go home, get that property tax bill, find out exactly what you're paying. If it's $2,000, you're going to pay about $8 or $9 a month. We feel like that's the best way for you to really understand exactly how is this going to impact me. Once this bond passes, we'll start selling bonds in 2019. The last bond on no increase is based on 2031, so it's a 12-year platform in that regard. That is a 15-second description, I think, on the actual bond itself. I will point out one thing that's come up and is a fairly common question. When you sit down to vote, that language that's on the ballot is a little bit wordy and it's a little bit legalistic. That's written by the state. It goes all the way back to our Oklahoma Constitution. The bonds and the projects are part of a 4-page binding document. In that binding document, it itemizes these particular projects that have been presented. That's what we're bound to when we sell these monies. But because we can't have a 4-page question on the ballot, we have one paragraph that tracks directly from the state constitution. Every year when we sell these bonds, we have to report all of the documentation as well as an accounting of the money to both the district attorney and to the attorney general. They review all of those documents before a single dollar can actually transfer. Lastly, I'll point out in those documents, because we have to track statutes, there are some things that 70% of this money. That's a statutory requirement on a bond issue. By law, you have to identify 70% of what you're doing with the money. If you'll add up those projects and those dollars, we have accounted for 100%. So there's a 70% statement in that bond. That has nothing really to do with what are we using or what are we not telling you about. That has everything to do with, that's a constitutional statement. Because it's constitutional and the state reviews it, they want to see that statement as part of the documentation. But again, add up those dollars on those projects and it'll add up to the full amount, 25.5. 25.5 is what it takes to pay this back over the next 12 years. That's what we need to pay for this. That's what we're voting on. So there's a little bit of gee-whiz information on some of those nuances that fall within the language. Why are we voting on 25.5 and so forth? Anything else that I've failed to mention in the bond part of it itself? I know later we're taking questions. So, all right.
Item 5, we will have a presentation from Joe D. Hall, General Contractors.
My name is Van Storm. I'm with Jody Hall Construction. We're construction managers at Elk City, Oklahoma. We worked on your last bond project with Renaissance, and we've been asked to participate in your upcoming bond election as construction manager. I'm the one that puts together this budget estimate, which I think some of you have already expressed some questions in that regard, and I'm the guy that comes to do the pre-construction, but I'm also the guy that's here throughout the job on a weekly basis to manage and foresee it to the very end. So I got to meet a lot of you guys in the first bond issue, and happy to have the opportunity to come back. So really what I wanted to present on is just giving a good explanation of construction management and our service and that delivery method. There's a lot of common misconceptions about that delivery method. Construction management at risk delivery method has not been around that long, since about 2004. Public entities were allowed to start selecting a construction manager, much like they select an architect or an attorney or an accountant. And our services are we follow state public bidding laws, and from the very beginning, we start working with the owner, the school district in this case, and the architect to help design a project that's within your means, starting with the pre-construction, which is what you have here tonight. And then as the plans progress, as we learn more details about the job, or as design changes, or we get more in depth with the details of the job, the estimates get modified or tweaked, but we're always tasked with staying within the elected amount. So it's a big part of our job throughout the pre-construction and up to the time that we publicly bid every portion of this work. So 100% of this job has to be publicly bid in a sealed public bid opening. When we had your last project, we had a 50 or 100 people attend, 100 plus subcontractors bid on every package from concrete, masonry, glass, etc. Those bid results are public knowledge at every school district, the county, every public job in the state of Oklahoma. And we are essentially giving estimates all the way up until the point that those jobs are publicly bid. And at the time that we accept those bids, they're assigned to us as construction manager at risk. And we're required by state law to deliver the school district, in this case, guaranteed maximum not to exceed that price. So a big point I want to make about this budget here is, it's based on our historical data, our expertise and experiences with similar jobs. You can think of 4 or 5 similar bleacher jobs we've done in the last 5 years: Minko, Lindsay, Crescent, Elgin, to name a few. We're using that data. We're cultivating feedback from those jobs and subcontractors to provide a good, solid estimate. We try to be conservative, but we try to be accurate too. There's contingencies allowed for unforeseens, of course, but the big message is, we had success with the same team on your last bond issue, on time, under budget, and we expect the same results with this project, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity. So we'll be happy to answer any questions you have when it's time. So thank you very much.
Next, we will have a presentation from Orion Security.
Hello, I'm Richard Faught. I'm with Orion Security Solutions. Thank you for having me tonight. I'm just going to do a quick overview of school security and the way it's changed in the market in the last 10 years. Orion Security Solutions has been in business since 2008. I've been in the industry for 20 years. We've really done a lot of research on school security in the state of Oklahoma as well as the rest of the United States. School security has changed, definitely. The way we think about it, the way the state looks at it. They've actually, I spoke at the state capitol about a month ago, and Oklahoma about a year ago created the OSSI, which is Oklahoma Security School Institute. And that is the governing body that makes sure that all the schools in the state of Oklahoma are doing active shooter drills. We all know about fire drills, right? Stop, drop, and roll. But as this evolves, we're all learning about shooter detection and what should we do, run, hide, fight. So a lot of these things we put together a package to present to schools to help them start thinking outside the box about security and the way things happen. So like I said, this presentation is usually about an hour, but I'm going to spend about 10 minutes and that's it. And then we'll take questions if you guys need it. But obviously we want to, instead of being reactive, we want to be proactive. So we want to deter, detect, defend, and notify. So we're going to deter with locking down schools, with video surveillance on the perimeter of all of the buildings. We want to make all that visible to anyone that's a threat, right? We want to notify and detect whenever we see somebody that might be an issue. So through facial recognition software, we are able to make a watch list and watch for those people and identify them and then notify, whether it's a school resource officer or an actual police department, whatever it is, whatever we want to set up. We set that up to where we're identifying and detecting early. We can lock down the school when we see those people. We can get those lists from the government, from the local PD, and you can also populate those lists yourself, the school can, with information that they've received with troublesome students, with outside students that are coming over. And we're also seeing districts share that information from district to district, because if a kid gets expelled constantly and they end up jumping districts, well, now it's a new kid in a new district. Well, we're getting all these school districts together to share this data back and forth. So if that student transfers to a new district, now he's in their list and we're watching for him. So a lot of things that we do is perimeter video surveillance, lockdown of the school with access control. We also have a shot detection device. So it's 99% accurate on shooter detection. It'll acknowledge the muzzle flash as well as the audible alert. We can notify, lock down school, anything that we want to happen with that notification device, we can make it happen. Well, a lot of schools also are doing panic alarms for their teachers and for staff and for resource officers. So if any teacher or resource officer sees anything happen at any time, they have the capability of notifying and locking down. We also have the ability to centralize that to maybe a superintendent or principal level only, to where only that level of security can lock down a school. Automated notification systems. So even if a school district didn't have a central security office, if they just had resource officers, we can notify all those resource officers through the mobile app and let them know exactly what building it's happening in, exactly where in the building that the shot detection was heard, or that the resource officer or teacher pushed a panic button. It could be anything. And then through that mobile app, they can pull up the video surveillance in that area as they're deploying to the area to see what's going on. So just trying to get ahead of everything. Go to the next slide here. So like I said, these are just some facets of what we do: intrusion detection, facial recognition, the panic buttons, shot detection, video surveillance, access control. So all these are just tools that we utilize to build a unified platform to deter, notify, detect. I mean, those are the most important things. We're here just representing education on school security and how it's evolving. Looking at everything you guys are doing and your plans, we've got schools that are putting in cameras in football fields, and with just a couple of cameras, we can look at the visitor area, look at the home section, and notify if there's troublesome people that are showing up, even in that big crowded area with just a couple of cameras. We're doing it at NFL stadiums. We're doing it all over the place. Like I said, I could talk for an hour on this, but I'm going to cut it now, and if there's any questions at the end, we can answer those questions. Thank you, guys.
Item 7, we will have a presentation from the Cashion School Board. So some of you in here may know me, some of you may not, so I thought I would start off with a little background of my history here at Cashion. I'm a graduate of the class of 1990 here. You can see in the picture there from my kindergarten yearbook, my mom was my kindergarten teacher. My grandfather, the other picture up there, Jack Simmons, served on the board in the 60s. And then my father-in-law, Harley Miller, served on the board in the 80s. My father taught here at Cashion. He was the shop teacher here in the late 70s and the early 80s. And then my mom, Nancy Simmons, taught kindergarten from my kindergarten year until 2010. So some of you in the room, I know she was your teacher. I received my accounting degree from University of Central Oklahoma. I'm a CPA, and I have been at Chesapeake for a little bit over 8 years. And while I have been there, I've managed areas such as construction, facilities, fleet, supplier onboarding, and contracting. And I tell you all of that Not to say that I think those things are what makes me qualified to make these decisions by myself, but to say that I think it's the collection of each of our experiences and backgrounds from all 5 of us on the board, and it takes all 5 of us to make the decisions that we make every month when we come and we meet and we decide on insurance contracts, hiring decisions, and decisions like this to present a bond issue to the community to vote on. So I'm going to introduce each of the board members. Kyle Vandruff was a high school principal here at Cashion. He now works in the insurance industry. Ryan Sunken is area partner at House Smith Restaurant Group. Jessica Ballard is a doctor of audiology, and Earl Ogletree is an attorney in Oklahoma City. Now, we have a list of questions that we have received, and so Earl and Jessica and I are going to answer some of those questions for you. The first one, why is the school using the land that was originally intended for the ag program? This land was actually purchased for $85,000 in 1984 for future school expansion. And it was kind of exciting to me to get this copy of the board minutes that are up here and the deed, because my father-in-law was actually on the board at the time that this land was purchased. The second one, when is the school planning to remove the Ag FFA as an elective to its students? There are no plans to remove Ag or FFA as an elective. In fact, there are plans to relocate the Ag facilities you just saw in Mike's presentation to actually give them a new shop and better facilities than what we have today. It will also locate them closer to the middle school and the high school so they won't have to walk as far to the Ag classes. In addition, over the past several years, we have not only not taken programs away, but we've added back band, vocals, FACS, STEM, and other new programs. Will there be asphalt all the way to the Ag barn as shown on the renderings? Yes, there will. Will board members be allowed to bid or profit from the passing of this bond? The shorter answer to that is no, but I have included an excerpt from the statutes if anybody would like more information on that. What technology company will be involved with the smart boards and security improvements? Those will be bid out as a later date, as you've heard from some of the earlier presentations. What is the purpose of building the athletic complex? There are several reasons why we thought this was important to do this and why we thought it was important to do it now. One of those is to provide more opportunities for our students and our community for facility usage. It will allow for more usage of Little League of the fields, for elementary to go out there when it's rainy and muddy. It will also prepare our school for the future. By relocating things like the football field, it will allow us to expand the current high school out onto what is the current football field, and provide other opportunities for other buildings as we need them. Jessica will answer the next questions.
Thank you. Am I on? Good. All right. Well, as Michelle said, I don't have a full bio for you, but I'm Jessica Ballard and a new member of the Cashion board. So some of the questions that have been posed in terms of the growth of the school as well as the sports complex kind of go hand in hand. And so I've grouped those together in terms of this discussion. As we look at our current school capacity and our current enrollment, which is just right around 600, what we know is the last couple years, really the last 2 years, we've grown about 100 students. So growth, I think as a school board, we have to look at where are we at now and where could we be in the future. We know that as we're tracking this growth, that's certainly a consideration as we look at this proposal and what we might need to plan for in the future. Right now, we estimate that Cashion Public Schools can comfortably accommodate about 800 students. So that's good news. We have room to grow for several years, probably at least 4 years or so at the current growth rate. Part of the reason, and I bring this up because that was kind of a big consideration as we looked at this entire project and this proposal is, what is our current population now, and what do we need to look at doing in the future to be sure that we can accommodate that? The sports facilities and moving those across the road, I think, has been a goal of the Cashion board for many years. Who watched the video online with Mr. Sowards talking? I thought it was really interesting because I actually hadn't heard that before, but you could tell, when Mr. Sowards talked about how they wanted to build a track many, many years ago, and I think that, as we've looked at how can we best accommodate those plans, we've realized that there's no room for a track on this side of the campus, and that it's going to take us moving that across the road. So as we've looked at, how can we best accommodate the both academic side as well as the athletic side, the board really felt that it made the most sense to move the facilities across the road, both economically, but in addition to that, when you build a track, it's not just about putting down 8 lanes of rubber. We're talking about doing work on the field. We're talking about doing lights, grandstands, concessions, locker rooms, restrooms, all of those things. And so as we look at the bigger picture and where Cashion might need to be in a few years, it kind of made a lot of sense to us to try to move a lot of that together. And in addition to that, it really gives us more space and flexibility here on this side of the campus to do what we need to with academic classrooms in the future. One of the other questions that was posed is in regards to what happens in the future if we do need to build more classrooms or another school. And if that is the case, that's certainly something the board is going to be monitoring closely. If we do continue to grow at the current rate, there may be a need for that. And we would need to then reevaluate and assess another bond. Depending on what the net assess value is, like you heard from Jordan talking about the increase in the value of the district, depending on what that is, the bond and tax increase associated with that is difficult to predict. It could be minimal. We've also received some questions related to turf field. Is that anything, can I just see anybody in the audience have a question about that? I don't know if anybody's here, but one of the things that was posed to us through email was related to turf and safety as well as cost. And so I've actually done some research into the pros and cons of artificial turf versus natural grass. And what's really interesting, if you look at the current data, what it tells us is that there's really no difference in terms of safety for our kids for turf versus grass. There was a study that looked at NCAA students from the years of 2013 to 2015 and compared prevalence of injury, and there was no statistically significant difference. And actually there were a couple studies that looked at concussion and head injury when you do have incidents where a kiddo hits the turf, which actually showed that the turf is softer and there was a reduced risk of injury with turf. So ultimately, as a school board, we felt that the decision really came down to what are we going to get the most maximal use out of. And certainly with turf, it gives us the flexibility to have a good surface that can be utilized really in any weather condition. And that was kind of the reasoning behind going with turf. One of the other questions kind of related to just the sports complex and the egg facilities is the crossing of 74F here, which is the road between the school and the other property. And I will tell you that, the board and Mr. Jackson are certainly investigating the best ways that we can facilitate crossing of the road safely. I think that is foremost on all of our minds. Mr. Jackson actually has a meeting with the Secretary of Transportation tomorrow. We tried to arrange that to be before this bond meeting, but ODOT has their own schedule that they work by, so we had to go along with that. In conjunction, I think that we're exploring lots of different options. We know that certainly a lot of schools employ employ crossing guards and have manned crossings, and those options are certainly available to us, as well as even things like if we had situations where we had a number of students that needed to get across the road, where we could even bus them over. So we're certainly going to be making sure that is as safe as possible. Is this Earl?
I'm going to answer a couple of questions that have been posed by the community, and then Mr. Vandruff is going to speak to you, and then I'd like to have some remarks before we close and take questions. But one of the questions that has come to us has been it's probably spurred off of remarks that we've had about what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years with companies protesting their taxes on whether it be an energy company or our wind companies, other types of companies. We did have 2 companies, and we've identified them. DCP and Wind Farm have traditionally protested their taxes. Now, the way this works, as an attorney, obviously we get charged with taxes, but if we have enough money, we can hire lawyers to protest and tie those taxes up in the court system for a while, and then ultimately there will be a resolution tax settlement which the company is banking on will be less than the taxed amount. This is something that happens. We have seen it happen in the Cashion School District. You've seen the growth numbers that Jordan has visited with you about in lieu of the tax protests by these companies. So yes, we are having at least 2 companies that seem to traditionally protest taxes, but we are not seeing a negative impact as a school system at this time from that. Next question, is it true that new buildings will not be built until 2030 to 2035? And the answer to that is new buildings will be built based on bond proposals when new buildings are needed. Obviously, we would come with a bond proposal to discuss the necessity of new buildings if we see population growth that would require that. Right now, if we were to build a new elementary school building, what we would have is a fully built building with utilities running that would not be full at all, probably be almost empty. So we don't feel like that at this time is the best use of the opportunity that we have. Next question, why is the bond so far-reaching? Could we not break it up into smaller units? And I'm going to touch on that a little bit in my closing remarks, but this school board has spent several hours looking at different ways to break up this bond proposal, looking at different options, and this is the best option we feel for this school at this time based on the growth that is being projected for us. The school board, Mr. Jackson, we rely on experts to assist us with the financial projections, but But with respect to breaking up a bond into smaller parts, we feel like this is the best bond considering what we need and the wisest use of our taxpayer money with respect to the facilities that we feel like would best serve the community as well, and most importantly, our kids. One of the questions was, I thought our schools, our classrooms already had smart boards, and they do. I work in a law firm, and every 4 years, our IT specialist comes to us and asks for money to buy new computers because the computers we bought 4 years ago are outdated. Our technology, if you haven't noticed the Apple advertisements, our technology changes yearly, and within 5 to 10 years, you're dealing with smart boards or computer systems that are no longer interfacing with what we have with new systems that are being brought into the school. Down. Is that the end? See what I'm talking about? Okay, question, how are buses leased with funds provided by Francis Tuttle able to be used in Cashion routes? What we get from Francis Tuttle is there's a certain amount of money that the Cashion schools are paid for busing our kids to Francis Tuttle and back. And we use that money, it goes into the general fund, and one of the things we use that money for is for leasing buses to run our school routes. That's general fund money that comes in because we are running routes to and from Francis Tuttle. Next, are the buses overcrowded, and at what point do we launch an additional route? The way we work this is once the buses get to capacity, to a point where we're over capacity or nearing over capacity, we add additional routes. At this point, we are unaware of the buses being overcrowded to the extent that a new route needs to be added. So what is being done about lunchroom size and schedules? I think if you met with the administration, that is something that thankfully part of this process, it's come to light that we need to do some restructuring as to the hours that our lunchroom is being used by the high school kids versus elementary school students. And that's going to be addressed and should be squared away next year for sure. Lastly, we've been told the high school science class does not have textbooks. Is that correct? And again, the answer to that question is these textbooks have been ordered and not received. This is something I want to speak to because this is something dear to me. I am unaware of a time sitting in a school board meeting where a teacher or a building principal or Mr. Jackson or our prior superintendent has come to the school board requesting curriculum for our children and it was denied. I am unaware of that. At a minimum, if there ever was an issue where there wasn't a vote, it would have been a situation where we discussed curriculum, and I can tell you we've discussed it at length. The school board, I would challenge anyone to check our minutes for the last 6 years that I've sat on this board. You probably will not find a situation where curriculum was requested and the school board did not vote to approve it.
My name is Kyle Vandruff. Most of you guys know at one point in time, about 5 years ago, I was a high school principal here in Cashion. I was in education for 17 years. I was a teacher, coach, principal the last 9 years of my educational career. This school district is near and dear to my heart. All of us that represent the school here on the school board have gone to great lengths and countless hours to come up with a plan to put it to a vote for you guys to make a decision. Going back, just give you a little background, I grew up in a similar town, similar structure, similar where education was a focus, where sports and athletics, extracurricular activities were a focus. Those are the things, education is more than just the classroom. There are so many examples, and I'm sure every one of us in this room have something that took place in high school or elementary that propelled us and developed us into the human beings that we are, developed us as a person. I was that kid. I'm going to give you a little personal story about me real quick. I was that kid in elementary, the slow learner, the speech impediment kid that struggled, had low confidence. And athletics pretty much is what got me over the hump. It's what propelled me to do the things and to go out on a limb and be a risk taker and compete and win and do all those things. So as we look at this bond that we have spent countless hours on, realize that not every kid comes to school. Obviously, they're coming to school to learn, but they don't come to school because of school. They come to school because they're looking for mentors or looking for things to help develop their character and their integrity and those kinds of things. So as you look at our bond, I know there's a lot of stuff that's on that bond. We really did spend a lot of time and countless hours in planning, looking at options, multiple options that would work best for the community. The other thing I would say, something that probably hasn't been emphasized as much as probably it needed to be, is our facilities, since I've been here, have been open to our public. And having a track, having a facility that our community can be proud of, that can use. It's pretty tough to drive in Oklahoma City or Kingfisher or Guthrie to go run or exercise. That would be a safe place for our community and our students to run instead of running around the town and possibly getting run over and all those kinds of things. So I just I took some notes. I shouldn't have to take notes about myself, but hold on a second. I'll make sure I hit everything. I just want to end. None of us have a crystal ball. When we could all sit here and we all wish that we did. We had a Mega Millions tonight, right? So we could do a lot of what if this, what if that. Right now we have entities within our school district that are going to help us pay for this bond. What if we don't do this now? That's my closing statement. What if we don't do this now? I just want you to think about that. Thank you.
So 6 years ago, this community elected me to be a member of the Cashion School Board. I had the pleasure over the past 6 years of serving with individuals who I have the utmost respect for, past board members, present board members for sure, but in the past, our board members that I have served with, we had been faced with some significant challenges, and I saw local community professionals, some of which are here with us tonight, work through significant problems for this school, taking hours and hours out of their lives to discuss all possible options and move this school forward the best we could. But 6 years ago, when I was elected school board member, I had a vision for the school, at least for my participation on the school board. I would be the annoying voice in the room that would say, "What about academics?" Anytime we would have discussions about funding, my question would be, what about academics? One thing we found is, what about music? What about drama programs? These have been resounding questions that come from me from 6 years ago all the way up to the very last school board meeting we had the other night, to the point where I'm sure our superintendents get tired of hearing me ask those questions. But my vision was to bring academics, a new level of academics to Cashion. When I came onto the school board, we were the school board itself was in the process of negotiating with Francis Tuttle. I was lucky enough to be a part of some of those negotiations, and I can tell you personally, I have seen the curriculum that Francis Tuttle offers our kids in this school, and it rivals any curriculum of any 5A, 6A school in the state of Oklahoma, and I would be willing to bet the country. If our students want to be challenged at a level of mathematics, science, engineering, computer science, at a level beyond what the normal high school would offer, this school offers our kids that opportunity from what that school board did 6, 7 years ago. When I took the position as school board, we had been discussing the Francis Tuttle issue, but one of the things that came up resoundingly was the fact that we need a track. And probably my third school board meeting, we looked at proposals by contractors to put a track across the road. I had no idea what it cost to put a track in a school facility. You cannot build a track for less than $1 million. The dirt work, all of the prep that goes into putting the dirt under the track, the drainage system so that your track doesn't wash away once you get it in, is expensive. That school board, sitting 6 years ago, felt that it was not wise to build a track without ultimately having a long-term vision. And the track fell to the wayside. And I caught a lot of flack as a school board member for not sticking up for athletics at that point. Now, when I was on the school board, Mr. Jackson was the principal of Kingfisher High School, and not one of these board members was on that board at that time. But over the years, we began having a common theme, having a common vision among board members as to how to move this school forward. Ms. Miller was added to the school board a couple of years later, and within a year or so of that, we were interviewing for a new superintendent. We made the awkward decision of changing our administrative leadership to try to bring this school into a place where when kids walk in the room or walk into the building, there's an air of confidence and there's an air of life, as opposed to the stagnant environment that we were that I was witnessing when I first took my place on the school board. There was not a close second person to Sammy Jackson when we interviewed multiple people as candidates for school board. Mr. Jackson had the awkward question, and I hope I'm not violating something. If I am, I'm sorry. He had the awkward question, Mr. Jackson, with limited funds, You give me your idea of how to bring life into this school. Paint doesn't cost much. Lights don't cost much. And people, that's how we bring life back into this school. We use our teachers, we use our building principals, and we bring life into the school, and the kids will react. That's Sammy Jackson. Now, Mr. Jackson has done a lot for Cashion School in the short time he's been here. When I came on the school board, these halls were silent. Mr. Jackson got music back into Cashion. We have security cameras around campus. We have LED lights. If anyone has noticed, we have LED lights throughout the campus, and it brings a vibrance to these rooms and buildings that I didn't even realize wasn't there until you saw it. Mr. Jackson and this school board has challenged our building principals to bring us improvement in curriculum and bring us plans for improvement in curriculum. And our principals have been busting their tails to do that over the years. We have challenged our teachers to bring academics to this school that we haven't seen before. And what I realized is once the teachers have a feeling of vibrance and life and want to be at work and enjoy what they're doing and feel that they're being supported by the administration, they react. And the children benefit. Not one person sitting up here is up here for one reason other than the kids in this community. I don't know if everyone in this room knows or not, but school board members do not get paid. Six years, I did my best to roughly calculate. I have spent somewhere between 175 to 200 hours in school board meetings. Now, they used to be a lot longer because we used to have to negotiate policies and discuss policies that we don't have to do as much anymore because everything is standard now. But that's a long time out of someone's life to just to have nothing to show for it. And I can tell each of you that I have a lot to show for it because I'm proud to be a member of this group. Now, another thing that may not have been clearly communicated to the community is this school board, about 3 years ago, we were executing the last bond that had been voted by you, and we were building this school facilities, the field house facilities that we have. Those were being built. We had the help of Renaissance for putting together all the renderings and making sure we had everything together so we could show the community exactly what we were going to get for the bond money that was being voted. And we hired a reputable general contractor. And in fact, a high-ranking member of that company was a longtime resident of Cashion, Oklahoma, in this school. The contractor started working. Things looked great. I came to a school board meeting one Monday night. I think Chad Tishner was there. I can tell you who was there because I'll never forget his words of Steve Andrews. When this company, the general contractor, walked in and said, "We're not going to be able to complete the project for the amount of money we have under this bond." Now, if anyone's ever built a house, you know that once a general contractor they call it getting you pregnant. Once you get pregnant, it's hard to get out. This school board was faced with a general contractor telling us it would take up to $1 million more to finish the last project. And I wish I could repeat Steve Andrews' word when I asked him what our options were, because that's exactly what we did. So we all were sitting in the room together, staring at each other, wondering what in the heck do we do? We fired the general contractor. We have a project that's in the middle of being completed, bond money that has been voted on by our public. We have promised our public that we would deliver pursuant to the renderings that Renaissance had given us, and now we're being told that because of inflation and increase in building cost, it's going to cost up to $1 million to complete that project. Long school board meeting that night. The next school board meeting, we met this man, Joe D. Hall. Joe D. Hall took that building or that bond project, took the renderings, rebidded it with his subcontractors, and we came in, I believe, under budget. This is the man that we trust with this new bond project because we've seen him in action when we had no other options. He came in and really did a great job for Cashion schools. So that's the history that brings us up to this bond. I think it's clear why this school board entrusts Jody Hall as the general contractor to execute this bond if it's approved by the voters. The hours that we spent looking at options were not spent just talking amongst ourselves about things we don't know anything about. We have architects. Luckily, we have a financial specialist who knows school financing because I don't understand it until someone explains it to me probably 3 to 4 times. And once I get it probably 4 times, Jordan, I got it. We use these professionals to make judgment calls based on the information we have in front of us at the time. Right now, this community is in a position to do great things for this school. Those projections we've told you about through the experts, and right now, we believe the bond package that is being proposed is the best bond package considering the situation we are in. There are other things that we want and need for Cashion schools, but considering the concerns that a lot of you have are the same concerns that we have. What are the promises for the future? We can't promise the future. We can only use our experts to project from where we are right now and make educated judgments based on that information. Because we can't promise the future, we feel it would be inappropriate to extend ourselves more than we are right now. And I can tell you that this school board has its eye on future facilities and future growth for Cashion. A lot of information has been discussed among the school board members in school board meetings about alternative bonds. And this is the best package we could come up with considering where we are. One of the things that has been proposed to me multiple times, a lot of people call this a football bond. I'm just going to call it what it is. I've heard it multiple times. And we looked at building a track, letting a track sit over there with a skeleton stand, and ultimately, at some point, moving the football stadium over in the future. The experts tell us that is an unwise use of taxpayer money. If you're going to do it now. And I can tell you, based on all of the projections, Cashion is in the position to do what we're proposing now. This is the best move to open the property we have here at the base of Cashion Schools, open it up for the future building and future growth. Now, I understand that not all students, not all kids play sports. And this school is doing everything within its power to facilitate all kids who come here, to try to give them the opportunity to develop the talents they have, whether it be music, whether it be speech, whether it be debate. Our academic team, Ms. Carnes, is off the charts right now. I don't know if you guys realize that we have that our school has developed in academics to the extent that our academic team is competitive in the district. But my resounding voice over 6 years, what about academics? What about our kids being able to compete in qualifying for college, going to college, and compete in college as students, was answered when I went to the experts. You cannot separate high school sports period, from the development of our kids into young men and women. If you want to have an interesting night of reading, you just Google up research projects, research studies by professionals, psychologists, economists, education specialists. You just Google the studies that have been done showing the performance of high school athletes at the next level on an educational basis. They perform higher in high school and they perform better in college. Not only that, economists have studied high school athletics for 60 years. There are 2 studies that have been released on participants in high school athletics across the board making between 24 and 32% higher wages at 60 years out of high school than non-athletes. Of course, the psychologists try to break it down and understand why. Some of it is just the type of kid that's going to compete in sports. But that's not the opinion of the specialists. That's not the opinion of the people who did the research. The resilience, the refusal to quit, the self-reliance, and the pride that goes along with high school sports echoed 60 years into the future when it's called biodata was taken of professionals and executives across the country. I'll submit to you that we cannot separate our high school athletics from education. The development that the young men and women get from our coaches is something that will be with them for the rest of their lives. I don't feel one of the 175 to 200 hours spent in school board meetings was wasted, because I've learned a tremendous amount about our kids, what our kids are capable of doing, and what Cashion is capable of. Kyle Vandruff touched on it just a second. But when we looked at all of the bond packages, this is the package that affects 80 to 90% of every kid, elementary all the way to high school, that goes to this school on an almost daily basis. The other bond packages would have facilities potentially sitting empty on multiple days out of the week. I'm not alone, because if I were to draft a bond, it would have all kinds of problems with it. But I sit with the professionals here. We have education professionals, accounting professionals, and people that are businessmen and women who are looking at all angles of these bonds, the hours spent to determine what we feel is best. And we feel this package is best, and we would ask, and I will just personally ask, that you would consider voting yes for this bond proposal. Thank you.
Item 8, question and answer session.
If someone has a question, we have 2 mics that are open. If you'll come down to the mic and identify yourself and ask whatever question you have, we'll do our best to get the appropriate person to answer it for you.
Hello, Kevin McGuire. One question I have, first of all, Orion, I know you guys they've got a great reputation. I know them well. School board members, I think you guys are all doing a great job. The question I have, one thing you said, Mr. Ogletree, was that you can't build a track for under $1 million.
Right.
What is that based on? I've looked at a comparable school and I've called their architects and tried to get as apples to apples comparison as I could. The cost to build a standalone track from ground up, $900,000.
Okay.
What I saw on the bond proposal sheet created by, I'm going to guess Sammy, along with the architects, said $3.6 million. How did we miss it that far? How do we come up with a $3.6 million standalone track when others can, create a similar 8-lane OSSAA certified track?
Yeah, the answer to that. Hello? There we go. The answer to that is just more to that cost. So it's not just the track. You've got site work, paving, electrical, utilities.
I'm sorry?
Theirs had that as well. I understand the site work, the dirt work.
Okay.
3.6 versus 900,000.
So paving, site work, utilities, drainage system, electrical.
And I saw on there we had $1 million concession stand. I think that the board would make a good decision if they had reliable information. But when you come up with a $3.6 million track that has $1 million concession stand.
Did you pick up one of these at the front door? The budget?
I already,
okay.
I've got behind the scenes information, so
okay.
It's probably better than that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Question number 2. As far as security, I think that's by far the number one need. I would hope that every parent, every person in the community would think that security is the overall need, right? Could the security upgrades be on Could we vote on that separately? Can you put that in a proposal, yes or no? Could yes. I understand because it's too late. But okay. So we could have come up with a security as one bond proposal question, and then the rest of it as a second one. Correct? Okay. All right. So with that said, school shooting, school violence has been in the mainstream media for only the last 4 months? Or was it 10 years? Okay. How did we miss this on the first bond proposal, Mr. Jackson?
How did we miss
security? Our children are the number one concerns of, I would think, everybody in the community.
Well, we have increased security from the first bond with the new building that was built. If you'll notice, the vestibule in the building specific for this purpose. We have taken measures.
I was asking Mr. Jackson.
I'm sorry?
I was asking Mr. Jackson.
Do you want to answer?
We have added a resource officer, full-time resource officer to help with our security. Our first bond proposal, we added cameras, and we have our entire campus under security with our cameras. And at this time, if you're asking about why it wasn't on the last bond proposal,
correct.
During the last bond proposal, the board and I discussed. It just didn't get on there. I mean, we thought we'd had it with the other security we had added at that time.
And with respect to security, you see the security cameras around the campus that have been purchased. This board has been very active in working with the individuals within the community that have law enforcement experience and getting advice and coming up with security plans for our kids. So this is an ongoing process. So that's the answer to your question, sir.
Good evening. I'm Jason Sadowski. First off, thank you all very much for putting this together. Your preparedness for this has been outstanding tonight. The last meeting we had, I asked several questions. Most of those have already been answered. So I am really glad you guys took all that back with you, like I said, with the emails and with the previous meetings. That being said, the first thing I wanted to ask about, same as this gentleman here, is with the security. At the last meeting, we were told that we're going to have a Homeland Security evaluation. Is that's been completed?
No, sir.
Okay, when's that going to be done?
As soon as possible. We're working on it as we speak.
Okay.
We will have it done.
Okay.
We'll have it done no matter what on the bond.
Okay, because that's kind of my specific question there. We have for the athletic facilities, we have it down to a dollar amount, what the facilities are going to cost us. But for security, we have $500,000. What does that entail, the $500,000?
Orion.
Well,
I guess my question is that it just seems like it's just a broad number. So, I mean, how much is it? We haven't broke down exactly which part of this facility is going to cost what. What does a metal detector cost? How many are we going to buy? Is it going to be walk-through detectors? Is it bag protectors? What are we looking at purchasing, and how many?
I think this is the question that you were waiting for.
Yeah, so we discussed with Sammy several options as far as walking interior doors down for classrooms, creating manufactured front doors, facial recognition software. There's metal detection in there. You know, a lot of people don't like the metal detection because it's kind of like a prison, but I mean, we've done several different situations, and that's kind of it. We value the three buildings that they have. Kind of the best guess of what will get the majority done needs to be done.
So the answer is still that we don't know.
So we talk.
Half of the 500,000 or whatever's in the budget is a budgetary number. The OSSI provides a security risk assessment for free at no charge because Homeland Security is involved and they've got funding. We do a private security risk assessment, but of course we charge for it. So we recommend that you guys use the OSSI, and I know that list is very long because every school is on the list. I mean, everyone is trying to get a security risk assessment so that they can get backing to go get bond money or utilize money to make the school safer. So I know that list is long, and I know that when I met at the Capitol a month ago, there was about 5 members as part of that team, and you're dealing with Homeland Security, and those guys just get people in line to go do the risk assessment. So to be fair, we haven't done a risk assessment of each individual building to be able to give a price. What's been done is the budgetary number has been assessed, and we're going to do everything that we can. If we're selected, this will be an open bid bond, open bid to any security integrator that wants to come in. We're here as a resource just to educate about the change and transition in school security in the last 5 to 10 years.
Okay. To get to answer your question about the number, how it was come up with.
Yes, sir.
We visited with a couple of different companies that do these things, and talked to them about what we were looking at: secure entrances, secure interior doors, fob systems, and things of that nature. We're also Wade Farrar and the county sheriffs are going to come in and do another security overview for us. But we talked to these companies and said, what number would we be looking at to do these things and that would ensure that we can do all the things that we need to do to secure the school? And that's how we came up with the number. To actually get down to the bidding and stuff, most of the companies aren't going to give you a bid until you actually have a...
Okay. So the answer is still that we don't know exactly what we're going to do yet, though. I'm not trying to just keep harping on this, but we're voting in 2 weeks.
We know that we're going. Yeah, we know that we're going to secure all interior and exterior doors.
Okay.
That will be that's the number one goal on this deal, and it's always been the number one goal is to secure the interior and exterior doors, and also to make our middle school and our high school the same secure entrance as our new elementary has, where there's no free entry into the system.
That's fantastic.
All the systems we also talked about will have an automatic lockdown system, and also we'll have a notification system that will allow us to know when any doors are open, and we can have our security officers make sure and see why those doors are open at any time. That's the basic plan for the security system.
Fantastic.
Get back a little bit more about what Mr. Chapter just said. We did get budgetary numbers per door, per camera, per entrance, per lockdown, so that he has some budgetary numbers to go from and assess his school and where he feels the most immediate need is and how to promote that number.
Okay.
Give you some backing in industry standard for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have just one more question here that I brought up at the last meeting there. Is with our the evaluation. We said that there was going to be an impact of 4.91%. That was the number, correct? The increase? Okay. Sorry, I didn't know who to be looking at. So that was basically, it was unprecedented growth, correct? Unprecedented growth based on what, the last 3 years or the last 30 years?
Well, I was looking at, we go back 20 years.
Okay.
We do a long-term growth history, and then we do short-term as well. Going all the way back to 2000, 2001, your growth was actually only 28 million, 2000, 2001. Since then, you've grown to 47 to 50 million. 2015, I believe, you went from 2015-16, you were at 47 million, you went to 63 million the following year. You went to 83 million the year after that, and then 111 million. So the last 4 years, I guess, from 47 million to 111 million.
Okay. All right. Okay, so then the other part of that then is I'd also asked what the breakdown was of where these tax money is coming from, what the percentage from residential industry, and when it was decided that the major portion of this is the wind farms. Is that correct?
I believe it is. When we get the assessments from the county, so every year when the county certifies these valuations, they certify them in 3 numbers. They certify real property, personal property, and public utilities. I don't see a breakdown of that as far as of the personal property, how much of that is commercial personal property versus residential. We can get from some Chamber of Commerce and so forth, we can get who the top 10 property taxpayers are. We could probably get an all-inclusive list all the way down to the very last individual on that list. But when we get the valuations, they don't break them down commercial versus residential. It's personal property, real property, public utilities.
A number thrown out at the last meeting was 90%. I don't know if that was an accurate number.
90%.
90%. That seems terribly high.
Yeah, I would hesitate to say 90%. Obviously, you've had a significant growth and far more of it commercial than residential. But if you look at your baseline of 47, a good portion of that was probably residential. So 70, 80%. I mean, we're kind of just spitballing a little bit here.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Because that was the other thing they were saying, that in that 4.91% growth,
Mm-hmm.
it was you said in lieu of the two companies that protested, but really it was just in lieu of just DCP, right?
Because the wind farm, I think Mr. Ogletree mentioned the wind farm is settled. So DCP is the only one outstanding on a protest.
Right. So the wind farm settled, but the wind farm, we're getting that money from the state, though. We're not getting it from the wind farm, correct?
So what happens with manufacturer's exemption, they have a property value that's assessed, but the state grants them an exemption. So the state makes up their portion for 5 years. After the 5-year manufacturer's exemption expires, the wind farm pays that portion. The state no longer pays it. So the value is still on the books. Mm-hmm. It's just who's writing the check for that particular entity. Under manufacturer's exemption, the state writes the check. They're still certified at that value. It's just the state pays their bill for 5 years as an incentive to come to Oklahoma.
Do we know when that exemption runs out? You said it's 5 years.
They're on a 5-year platform, so it's a standard 5 years. Exactly when the state started their manufacturer's exemption, I'm not sure. Okay. But their property value, even at the end of that, would still stay on the books. It's just the state's no longer going to pay their tax bill for it.
Right, but what happens if they protested again and they don't pay? Then we're still in the same situation.
We could be, yeah, sure. I mean,
so that's my question, I guess. The end result. Okay, so what is that tax liability then?
If that particular wind farm goes off, I don't know what they're valued at. That's why we projected at no growth. If we were to lose, so there's a million what ifs we could run through numbers wise. I don't know what the wind farms are valued at. I don't have a breakdown of that. I don't know what DCP is valued at. They're probably not going to go to zero. That would be a pretty hard argument to win in court, that our property literally has no value. So there's going to be some happy medium. Let's just throw out wind farm, whoever it is. If you lose 25% of your value, so 25% of it, for whatever reason, it just evaporates. It's gone. You drop to 83 million. And let's say that's 2 years from now. There's no other increase. You literally just lose 25%. Property taxes would go up about 7% from where they were at that time.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I hope that's kind of...
That you answered my question.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
I'm Bill Deeds. I live north of town. Who actually has title to the land east of Euclid? Do we own it? Where the ballpark is going? Who actually owns that land?
The school owns it.
The school does own it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Another question I've got is on the safe rooms. We're talking about security, but is there anything as far as inclement weather that's going to be included out there at the ball field that they can get into if they have to for major emergencies?
Yep. We don't have that in the ball field. We've actually put that in the main facilities. We began instituting that here from general fund money, actually. But to answer your question is no, not in the sports facility out there.
Okay. And on the security side of it, in the event something should happen here, is there an armed guard from the local police department here, like at the elementary school? Will there be one here?
We have a resource officer on campus.
24/7?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes they actually are a little too armed, but that's okay with most of us. But I'm fine with it. Any more questions? Yep.
So thanks so much, and I think this is a really good, I think I counted 102 people here, so that's awesome. So I think we definitely have a lot of interest here. I do want to start off my rule. It's going to be a really simple question, so it's not going to be really high pressure, so you guys should be okay. But I want to thank you guys for being here and answering a lot of tough questions, right? So it's tough, right? Sometimes it seems like maybe your own personal credibility is put on stage, right? Your desire in terms of, is it doing well for the school, or maybe some sort of personal interest. You're not asking me, but I'm just going to say in front of the group, I've been here for about 4 or 5 years, and I would say I've looked at each of you. You guys have had an impact on my family. And when I look at you guys as a board making decisions for us, I have 100% trust that you're coming from a good place, that you're trying to make the best decisions for this community, for today and for the future. And I don't think there's anything from a criminal standpoint or personal impact situation that you guys are gaining from this. I really believe that. And I would ask all of you that are here, I would ask that you take that question to heart when you go vote. Do these people have the best interest, or are they trying to claim something personal for themselves? I think they're doing something best for the community. So I trust you guys, and whatever these experts are here, I trust you that we're going to have the best decision moving forward for our kids. So with that in mind, my question is that as a basketball and football coach and a baseball coach here in the community with 5 kids, I've noticed, and I know Coach Hardaway is here, I know from a basketball perspective, we've got 36 boys coming out for basketball. That's a lot of kids. They don't have an outlet. I think, if Coach Hardaway could have 15 coaches and play in 15 different places, he would do it, but we can't do that. And so there's a bunch of boys who are going to have limited opportunities. And so when I just think from the boys' perspective, and then I think about girls who have some options with sports, but they don't have football, when we look at the multi-sport facility, so I don't think of it as a football facility, my first question is, will the football field being field turf have the opportunity to have soccer or lacrosse or other options available to them beyond just for kids at the junior level to practice and play on?
Yes.
That's my first question.
So that facility will be for all sports and can be used for things in addition to sports. And that's the intent of that facility. It will not be a standalone indoor football practice field, as I've heard it termed in the past. Baseball, any sport that can use that facility and needs to use that facility will have access to it.
So if with the advent of 36 boys coming out for junior high basketball, right, not all of them will be able to make the team, right, in essence, or get quality time. It's going to be really hard for Coach Hardaway to do that. And I don't envy the work that he does to make sure they're all growing. But the idea is if they had an outlet like soccer or lacrosse, or if girls had soccer, that would be fulfilled with a field turf field. Would that be correct? And opportunities for other kids to grow outside of just football and the traditional sports that we have available here.
That's one of the intents of having turf on the field, yes.
So that's not only an investment in football, because I heard football field, but actually what I'm seeing is my daughter who's 9, who loves playing soccer. We don't have a soccer field. She plays with 6, 7 other Cashion girls. That's a possibility for her, right?
It's definitely being discussed, and I don't see why it would be impossible.
Okay, wonderful. So again, I want to thank you guys for the work that you're doing. I think you've done a great job of presenting and providing us all the numbers, and I think it's a matter of trust, and definitely from this perspective, again, you didn't ask me, but I'm going to give a yes vote for you all, so thanks so much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Bill Williams. My great-grandfather founded this town, so I've been around here for a long time. Mrs. Ballard said in 5 years we're going to max out. So you're going to, in about 5, 6 years, you're going to ask us for another 20 or 30 million. And we haven't even paid the last bond issue off yet. So I don't want to be a bubble buster, but I want everybody to think about this before they vote on this. Because that one lady said that you couldn't guarantee us 4.9%. Because in 5 to 6 years, it's going to be 10%. So I just want you to think about it. Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Yeah.
I'm not statement. We don't need any statements. If you have questions for the board or any of these people. Okay.
My name is Glennis Peterman, and my concern, and I know you spoke to it briefly, is getting the kids across the highway. That was not printed in the original issue, and the money, I didn't see any money that was set aside for any kind of conveyance over or under or through. And it is a highway, and kids are going to be going back and forth. So I really would like somebody to speak to that a little bit more and talk about maybe what a cost on that might be.
I appreciate that. One of the that's one issue that we did discuss. And with our resource officer and with our relationship with the town of Cashion and bringing ODOT in, we're going to find the safest way to cross that road for our kids. I think from a cost prohibitive standpoint, trying to go under or over that road is going to increase this bond and in my opinion, misuse those funds just for that purpose. That has been discussed at length, and one of the things that that has been discussed among the school board and that we will be looking at is to find the safest route across the road, whether it be barriers, speed bumps, a light, traffic control devices, speed limit. This would be a town issue. Speaking with the town about dropping the speed limit further out, just so that we can control traffic for kids crossing the road, and then having a resource officer or staff member there when the kids are crossing. That's the plan right now.
So does that mean that they're going to go across the road just once a day? I mean, you know, there's going to be kids back and forth across the road. My understanding is that classes over there, classes over here, running across to get to that back over here. Is that how that's going to work? Because your resource officer is going to be pretty darn busy, and they're also going to be in security, and they're also going to be caring about the buildings. So it's going to be maybe more people. That's a question. Are there going to be more people that are going to have to be hired to do? So it's going to be more money in that area too, for the hiring of more people. I'm for keeping the kids safe. I mean, I just need to know how you are going to do it.
Well, we're not supposed to have kids running back and forth across the road
You're not
in
supposed
class.
to.
And so
I know kids.
Well, we can obviously control the logistics as the classes change and have the appropriate people there. That would be up to the building principals and staff to make sure we have.
You know, when I left my backpack over there, and I'm just going to be right back. It's going to take 1 second. I'm going to run across there real quick. I just, you know, safety and security. And I think those are two key issues. And I think they were put at the bottom of the totem pole, and I think that's poor planning.
I can assure you, ma'am, that has not been an issue that was at the bottom of the totem pole. Well, if the cost of or the feasibility of going over or under that road, I think would be something that would be significant from a financial standpoint. We discussed this at length, and we feel like that is the best way to cross the road. Schools do it all over the country. All over the country.
Security and safety.
Thank you. I was wondering if you were in the audience.
Yes, I was. And,
do you want to tell the ladies and gentlemen what you said?
No, I don't. I'm Steve Andrews. I got a question, guys. I was ready to vote for this bond this time. I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think the board has done an awesome job getting everything we need. And the architects, you guys hit a home run on this one. It's going to be beautiful. The problem I have is, why another $5 million? I mean, I understand we have that capacity, but does it hurt to have a little room there? Because it's like you said, we gained 100 kids. So what if we have to add, and it's always been a priority of this board not to have trailer houses out here. So what if we got to have some classrooms and you know, before we're ready, or we think we're ready? I mean, because the growth is unbelievable out here, guys. I mean, it's it amazes me, and I just why the other $5 million for this and not leave us some room to address some other issues if we needed it. That's the only question I had.
So, go ahead, Jordan.
Mr. Andrews, I'll touch real quickly. Part of this planning process, I think we ran between 12 and 15 different financial scenarios for the board as they were putting together these different pieces. And Mr. Ogletree, I'll let you address maybe on the project side here in just a minute. But from a financial perspective, one of the options that we did look at was adding those classrooms now. And when I called Mr. Jackson, my first question was, are you sitting down? And he said, why? And I said, if you do all of this, you're talking about $42 million. And that is a huge pill to swallow. One thing I want to keep in mind too, you all are anticipating a lot of growth. with that growth comes some of that additional valuation as well. So that will help offset whatever that future bond looks like. From a capacity perspective, on this bond, you're at about half of your capacity. At any given point in this bond, you're only at half of what you're capable of. So from a possibility perspective, I want to make sure that everyone understands you do have the possibility in 2019, 2020 to add those classrooms. Obviously, it's a numbers game. How many, we get 200 new students. How many homes did they bring with them? Were there any other businesses that came in to offset that? So there's a numbers game to it that we have to go through. What does that tax impact look like? But you do have that kind of capability. And I wanted at least to lay the foundation of, there were 12 to 15 different scenarios that were considered, including part of that, but it was just a big pill to swallow. The difference between the 21 and the 25, I'm a numbers geek, and I don't keep my projects real straight, so I'm going to defer to someone else on some of those project differences between the two. But hopefully some of that background and foundation helps understand a little bit how we got here, as well as what opportunity you still have going forward. So, all right, thank you.
Any more questions?
Hi, I'm Linda Linhart. I've lived here all my life, and my question to you.
Can we drop that for you?
Oh, you know, this
Does that help? There you go.
I've lived here all my life. I've gone to school over, through my time, and we do appreciate you taking all the time that you've taken to get this board together, bring these gentlemen in, and give us a perspective. But the question I have 2 granddaughters that go to school here, and my problem is we don't have enough school books. So why are we trying to pass a bond for the facility to bring in more people because of football? And we've got kids in our school system that can't even read a regular clock. They depend on their cell phones or digital. And another thing I don't understand is my granddaughter, I help her sometimes when my daughter can't help her. And I said, "Where's your classroom book?" She said, "We don't have enough." When I was in high school, we had books for everybody. Of course, we was a small school, but back then it was big enough. But we always had books, whether they were old or whether they were new. We didn't have that many new books. And I can tell you this, Willie Williams and Deborah Hamill know what I'm talking about. We had a great school system. We still do. And I cannot say that I am going to vote yes or no at this point. Pretty much no. Because I've already talked to the assessor's office in Kingfisher, and they said, depending on your bond, how much your taxes are going to go up, they will go up. In the last 3-4 years, my taxes have gone up about $200. And I work for the state, so I don't make any money. So my question is why aren't we building bigger classrooms and having books for these kids to learn on?
Like I said, and I thank you for your question. Like I said in a couple of statements when I was speaking, the school board, we look at issues that come to us on agenda, and the principals and teachers need, if there is a need for school books that you are aware of that is a legitimate need, I would ask you to come to the school and talk to the building principal and tell them you have a legitimate need for school books. That needs to be an issue that's voted on. I can assure you that this sitting school board, to my knowledge, has not rejected a curriculum vote since we've been here. So anytime the building principals come to us with requested curriculum, whether it be books or anything, I have always voted yes. So I am not aware of kids that don't have books. I know that we have, and if you would address that with the teacher, if there is a legitimate need there, and the teacher needs to discuss that with the building principal, I'm sure the school board will take action on it. I can guarantee you that.
Do you have any teachers in here tonight that do not have enough school books for all their children to take home? Instead of taken them off a copy machine and handed it to them at the end of the day? Because my granddaughter's doing that right now. She's a junior in high school.
If your daughter will address that, or son-in-law will address that with the teacher and the building principal, I can assure you the school board will deal with it.
Well, I doubt if my daughter will. That's why I'm speaking up, and she's not here tonight, and I could scan her live.
Understand, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because we need to know this stuff, and hopefully the community would need to know that there's a way to address these issues, and the way to address these issues is to go to your teacher and building principal, and your building principal will bring that to the superintendent and the school board. And I can tell you the school board is serious about curriculum here, and we've resoundingly voted in favor of anything that's been brought before us.
Okay. I have another question. When I was in high school, we had a lot more for the students to be educated on than just sports. They started football, I think, in 1965, and Larry Mantle, Mickey Mantle's son, a brother, was our coach. We had a good football team. But the thing is, we still had good resources. We had art, we had music, we had band, we had speech, we had governmental programs, problems of American democracy. We had those, and we had psychology. We had a lot more. My granddaughter can't even write cursive because they've dropped that out. Why is that?
I don't think kids write cursive anymore. I honestly don't understand that, but it's our kids are on iPads now. The computers have taken this. That's a curriculum issue, and like I say, the school board is in favor of approving curriculum. So if you'll bring that to your building principal, I can tell you that we'll deal with it, and we'll be in favor of voting to provide books if there are no books.
Okay. I have one last question. I did talk to the principal at the cheer deal in Tulsa a few weeks ago. We're losing some students because of bullying and racial. I am very serious. I've heard so much of it going around in this town that it just makes me mad. And then they wonder why kids bring guns and knives into the school, because they get tired of being bullied or being harassed about their race. And the security team, that what we have, I think is a good idea. That I think that should come first. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Any other questions? Anyone else? I'll turn it back over to you, Michelle.
Need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Ryan and seconded by Jessica. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried 5-0. Meeting is adjourned.